All we need is a little understanding. Walk a mile in their shoes. And if we keep our hearts open-minded, we'll enjoy this wild ride called life. And if we keep our hearts open-minded, we'll enjoy this wild ride called life.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the True Sweet High podcast. This is Annette, your host, and I'm really excited to have Jacob Thornton on today because he is going to share his story on something that we don't really talk about. And I think that listening to him as we spoke a few minutes ago, his positivity on life, his outlook on life is just really, it's really amazing. So, welcome, Jacob. Thank you so much for being on here. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
Well, my name is, Jacob Thornton. Well, to start off with, tell myself about me. Of course, I have high functioning autism, and there's actually two sides of this spectrum. One's the lower end, and one's the higher end of the spectrum. Of course, I was fortunate enough to grow up being on the higher end of it, to where I can function like everybody else, like have a job, go to the grocery store, just do, simple things, even, dare I say, if become a runner and run like all these marathons and half marathons even. But yeah, there's two sides of the autism spectrum, as I've said. One is higher and one is lower. The higher end of it basically is just those who have it can function like everybody else with little to no assistance at all, versus people who are on the lower end need help to function in society, and their mental capacity, age-wise, hasn't really caught up with their body. And what I mean by that is, if someone, who's on the lower end of the autism spectrum is 25, physically, yes, they are 25, but mentally they're like 10 years old. Therefore, because mentally they haven't caught up, with their body, they're going to act like a, 10 years old person, versus someone who is on the higher end. Their mentality, if they're 25, then, from my experience as a 24-year-old young adult on the higher end, they're going to act like someone who is going through their 20s. Mm-hmm. And then, to me, I think that's pretty cool, being on the higher end of the autism spectrum, because I've been going through life and talking to people, and they have no idea I have it. It's like, when they see me, it's like, oh, he's just a regular guy. There's nothing really wrong with him. But if you hang out with me long enough and you actually pay attention, you'll actually know there's like, I don't want to say something wrong with me because that's not really appropriate.
Yeah.
But there will actually be one thing different about me. And then that's when you'll know, oh yeah, he has autism. It's not bad. He can do anything everybody else does. I also have these two little enemies of mine named depression and anxiety. Now, you wouldn't think that someone with on the higher end wouldn't deal with that, but I do. And there used to be a point where my anxiety and my depression was so bad, and it didn't have anything to do with my autism at all. It'd get to a point where those two would get so bad to where I would just shut down completely and not interact with anybody. Like I would go from being a happy, positive extrovert to a shy, quiet introvert. And that would go on for maybe hours on end. I mean, it was just awful. And I decided, you know what, I'm gonna start overcoming that and use my ability as an athlete to just run and then meditate, for like 15 minutes a day. And, I just, over the course of the years, I stuck with that. And I quickly figured out that my depression and anxiety can only take over my body and mind if I allow it to. So after I learned that instantly, turned on that little light bulb in my head, and I was like, oh. So I let those two take over me, and that's why I acted the way I was. So, of course, I started pushing all the depression, anxiety, like all the way to the back of my mind, to where mentally I don't have to deal with it anymore, and it's like not there. And then to keep it there, I would start, every day, as I get ready for the day, I'd look at myself in the mirror as I'm getting ready and tell myself at least 15 positive things about myself. And, I'd stick with that consistently. That's like every day in the morning from when I wake up to the time I go to bed. And because of that consistency, that depression and anxiety that I've dealt with, mind you, had nothing to do with my autism, has, they've been slowly just kind of dying out, if you will.
That's pretty incredible that you have learned to change your mindset like that, because not everybody can do that, especially when we go to that dark place and we get that high level of anxiety, and nothing, it's all in your head. And so when you're so focused on that, nothing else, you can't think of anything else, but you have learned to be able to take a step back and actually incorporate these new methods to help you. So that just I don't want to say I'm shocked. I'm just like so impressed because I have not learned to do that. I have not learned to do to state 15 positive things about me. I just learned to just take a deep breath, walk away from the situation that's giving me anxiety, or, turn on music to drown out the depressions. But listening to what you just stated is absolutely incredible. And, where did you learn to do that, and how long do you think it took you to get to that place?
Well, that's a good question. Really, honestly, it took me about 8 months to figure all that out.
Wow.
Because there was no way I was gonna figure that out within a day or a week.
Right.
There wouldn't be a way I was able to do that. So within the 8 months, I slowly started to learn, and I was like, at the end of those 8 months, I'm like, okay, well, the positive can certainly, do away with any negative. So therefore, I've, started doing what I did and just telling myself 15 positive things about myself as I was getting ready for my day. And I've just been doing that ever since. And, like I said, it's all about consistency. And I did used to do what you did, which would, listen to music and drown out all the negativity and the depression and the anxiety.
Hmm.
And there was a time in my life where that did work. But, I did that during the years where now I was a teenager and I was still a kid. And that did work during that time period. But as I got older and I hit my 20s, it was like, I got to start owning up to these internal problems that I have and assess that situation and figure out how I'm going to deal with that and work with that. Because I knew if I didn't address that the minute I hit my 20s, then, when I turned 30, 40 years old, I kind of already figured out that I wasn't going to live a very happy life, and I'd be angry, depressed, sad, irritated, just any negative emotion you can conjure up, known to the world, that I would experience constantly every day. If I were to hit my 30s and 40s, I'd kind of be that. I'd be that. That old man yelling at people to get off his lawn and be angry about every little thing. I'd be that. I'd be the angry old man.
That's still so mature of you, because may I ask how old you are now?
I am 24, and um I dealt with the music to drown out the negative emotions when I started doing that when I was 13 years old,
Wow.
because then music was an escape. It was like it was it was like reading a book where, if you read a really good book, and I'm talking about the hardback covers with, that has like X amount of pages in it, that has like the really excellent finite details that just pulls you in the minute you open it.
Hmm.
And that's what it was like for me at 13, I would listen to a certain song, and that song would pull me into that world, and I would just mentally, envision myself being part of that world. Like, if a song lasted like 10 minutes, then for that 10 minutes, for the duration of the song, I would envision myself in that world. So, I didn't actually notice any of the negative emotions I was experiencing until I was 18, because when I was 13, I did notice some of the anxiety and depression, but I didn't really acknowledge it, that it was there. I just thought, oh, well, I'm 13 years old. I'm just going through some emotional stuff and still trying to create this identity of who I am and trying to forge a personality. But when I hit 18, I'm like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe I do have all this depression and anxiety.
Wow.
Maybe, if I listen to a certain song that deals with that, then maybe I'll learn how to cope with it. And then, that worked when I was, from when I was 18 to 19. But then when I hit 20, it's like, okay, you know what? Music doesn't work anymore. I'm gonna start addressing these problems before I turn into the angry old man.
No, and that's absolutely so mature of you, because it didn't take me until I was in my 40s to finally deal with what I was masking for decades. And so for you to be able to recognize what works and what doesn't work and what's actually happening at this time in your life is absolutely incredible. And I love that. I was speaking to a couple of friends from high school within the last month or two, even a few days ago, and we were discussing how, oh my gosh, how did it take us until now to finally speak up about what we're going through, and finally deal with it, because the we just didn't learn these ways. We grew up in a generation where we just didn't talk about it. And so for you to be able to be here and just, speak openly on what you deal with and how you're coping with it, and how you're not just covering it up, like you're digging deep to figure out, what does work for you. It's inspiring. I hope that everybody who's listening can really learn, get some takeaways from this, because it really is incredible that in your age you have learned how to do this, and now you're teaching all of us. It's like, oh my gosh, take note. Take note, you
Yeah,
get.
yeah. I'm the professor of this big Ivy League university, and you guys are the students quickly writing down what I have on this big old board. So that's kind of what it is right now.
No, it's incredible. And so you have graduated college, you've been podcasting, you have spoken at mental health conferences. I mean, that's huge. And it's amazing.
Yeah, and believe it or not, when I was at when I spoke at my first mental health conference, it was a whole conference, and they had their own little section called, in our own backyard, whereas it had like 4 people in it, and our thing was, it's okay to say you have a mental illness.
Yeah.
And see, there was 4 people. There was me. There was a recovering alcoholic who has beat her addiction to alcohol, and is now living a happy, healthy lifestyle, with working out, eating right, doing these health videos. And then there was there's a mother whose son, died because of suicide, and she is now a best-selling author, within the state of Texas. And then there is a war veteran who deals with PTSD and is, doing his thing and teaching other veterans to be open about it. So during that first mental health conference, I ahead of time, my mom gave me a pamphlet of, of who's going to speak first. It's going to be the lady who had beat her addiction to alcohol and was going to share her story. Then it was going to be the mother of the son who had committed suicide. Then it was going to be the war veteran, and then it was going to be me. So we all got on stage. We all had these nice little leather chairs that were, I guess to them they were comfortable, but to me it was uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying my best not to squirm around a whole lot. Of course, I was dressed up real nice to look presentable. Yeah, I was dressed up real nice to look presentable in front of the audience. There was like 700 people there, and
Wow.
I was trying my best not to squirm around in that leather chair because although it was nice looking, it was very uncomfortable. Like I was focusing on the leather chair and not really paying too much attention to the audience. I was like, I can't sit here anymore,
Right.
So, after the main, the other lady, which was the introduction speaker, introducing everybody, I was thinking, okay, I memorized the pamphlet. Someone else is going to speak first, then I'm going to be the last one to go. So the introduction speaker pointed, gave her did that suggestion hand motion to where I'm going to speak first. And I'm like, I literally looked at her, pointed to myself out. I said, me?
Oh.
And she nodded. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, wow. And so, of course, I got up there. I had a little scripted, 2-page speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was nervous. Like, the audience could not see it, but I was actually sweating because the lights were shining on me and I couldn't see the audience that well, and my hands were shaking.
Mm.
And I did great. I gave an awesome speech. I didn't. The one trick that helped me get through that was just pretend you're talking to the wall and the audience is not there. Even though physically they were there, I just stared at the wall and pretended like I'm talking to the wall and imagined the audience not being there.
Yeah. And that was your first conference with 700 people?
Yeah, it was. It really was. Yeah.
Wow. Good for you.
And then the second one, it was the same conference, and this is the one that's held every year, and it's done within my community of where I live. And I've been a huge part of it ever since I spoke at it. And I'm, looking for different conferences to go to right now. But anyway, the second one was more of a video kind of thing. It was like, I did an interview with a guy who, runs his own company, who's a part of the, it's okay to say mental health illness sort of deal. And, he asked me some questions, and of course I answered them. And again, I was, in his office. And this time the seats were actually very comfortable to where I can sit and I won't have to squirm around a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
So he asked me the questions. We went through the interview. He was recording the whole thing so it could be live on, the television. And so, a couple of weeks and months go by. The mental health conference is up. Everybody's there. But then when it came time for the four people, these same four people that I mentioned, me included, it was more of a video, and of these same four people, and I was actually on there, just so telling them how I've been. Here's how I coped with all this. This is what I'm doing now, and I'm gonna have to find the link and send that to you. But and then this conference, the same one, it had like 1,000 people who attended it this time, and they all recognized me. Some of them didn't, and they were just hearing me for the first time during that pre-recorded interview that was being televised during that conference. And I mean, they all loved me. Not to sound self-absorbed or anything, but they all loved me. And I was at home and I was just watching it on my television the whole conference, just listening to different people, and I saw myself in that pre-recorded interview on the television. I just drank my tea, nodded, and said, you did good, Jacob. You did good. And then I just watched the rest of the conference go live, and that was it.
Were you just so proud of yourself for accomplishing such a huge, I mean, that's such a huge accomplishment.
Yes, I was very proud of myself, because I knew if I could do that, then in terms of public speaking, there's really nothing else I couldn't do.
Right.
Because I always thought it as, it's me versus, myself, and really nobody else. I mean, who's going to stop me from doing anything?
Right.
I mean, no one's really going to stop me from doing anything except myself. So that's just kind of how I saw it in terms of, with me when I did public speaking, and, me accomplishing my goals.
Incredible. So what do you foresee yourself doing within the next few years?
Well, since I'm pursuing, a degree in journalism right now, I see myself, working with just different news companies, writing for a few newspapers here and there, or actually having a good full-time career with the podcasting industry. So it's either I'm going to end up doing that, or I'm going to end up working for, a news company. It's going to be one of the two.
And so what is the name of your podcast now?
It's called Mentally Healthy. It's I know it sounds cheesy, and I know it sounds silly, but
No.
it was I actually didn't have a name for it, and before I created it, I was trying to think of a good name. Like,
That is a good name.
It is.
I love that.
I know it's awesome, but it's just when I first created it, it was the title of the whole podcast that I do is so silly and cheesy, and I'm like, okay, well, people are gonna laugh at it, but I'm just gonna create it anyway. So when I first released my first episode, which is called Grandiose Introductory, I was talking about myself and who I am and what my whole platform's going to be about. And then, of course, my first season wasn't just about, it wasn't about mental health. It was just a whole deal of different things. And then I was like, okay, well, I may as well start talking about mental health and different kind of mental illnesses. And how people can best, combat that. Even there was topics that I would talk about that I had no experience, like life experience with, that I didn't do my best to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the course of the time, I started doing that, and I became more creative and more expressive with my episodes. I just didn't do an episode point blank, like, okay, here's what this topic's going to be about, or here, this is what this season is going to be about just for this season. I got, like, with each episode, I became creative. I'd do it, like, make each episode and each season different from the ones before, because I wanted to keep my audience, I wanted to keep pulling in my audience and keep them, intrigued. I would listen to other podcasters and take mental notes of how they did their podcasts, and I would, use those mental notes and kind of, add in the cool, pardon my language, badass introductory music. And then, towards the end, I would, say whatever I said towards the end of my podcast, and then add in the badass ending music, just so the audience can listen to some cool music as my podcasts end. So, and it would be different music, it would be different things just to keep my audience captivated.
I love it. Good for you. So how many episodes do you have so far?
Oh, wow. When I last counted, I have 106 episodes, but right now, since I just released one episode titled F Depression, I have 107 episodes right now.
Oh my gosh. And you've been doing it for a year?
Yes, I've been doing it for a year, and that's just because, when I released my first episode, I'm like, I actually like doing it. I don't care if I sound silly. I don't care if I sound dumb. I don't care if I stutter or if I go off topic. I'm just going to do it because I love doing it.
That's great.
I didn't care if I were making money based off sponsorships. I'm just going to do it. So, and then, huh?
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and then over the course of the time, I just kind of, it just kind of started having a life of its own. And I was known as Jake, the guy who does stuff on mentally healthy. I didn't introduce myself as mentally healthy. I introduced my name as Jake because that's, my short abbreviated name for Jacob. So,
yeah.
And then Jake, of course, me, became this. It didn't become. Okay, well, it became another person, but like it became like an on-air personality versus as opposed to who I am outside of it. Mm-hmm. So, and then that Jake person became like Jake on air, which is, this guy who is extremely extroverted, bubbly, wild and crazy, and just we'll talk about whatever, even if it's on a mental health topic, and just talk about things, just even if it's things that are, if it's like censored podcasts where, it's kid and family friendly, he'll do that. Or if it's a podcast where it's not kid and family friendly, he'll just go out on a limb and say things, and they're not sugar coated. Like they're like 100% authentic with what he says, regardless of who hears it. And then, of course, I do not have a website. I've been debating on if I should or not. I'm still debating that till this day, but you know, I've been over the views I've gotten over my podcast, and you know, the analytics of how many viewers I've had obtained through Anchor, I'm like, okay, well, I guess my audience really likes my personality and my show, so I'm just gonna keep this Jake personality and change it up each time. And Jake started becoming one with Mentally Healthy, and I'm loving it more each and every day.
Oh, I love that because you're just being your authentic self.
Yeah, and
And you have the passion for it, obviously. I can hear it.
yeah, and I think that's one thing I love about doing the whole podcasting and releasing my episodes is I'm being true and authentic, while at the same time trying to be professional. It's the key word, trying. And
Well,
while other podcasters, they do theirs professionally, I don't. After listening to some some really popular high-end podcasters who are like entrepreneurs and stuff, I don't. There's when I listen to them, there's no authenticity with them. They don't have those true colors that they express.
mm-hmm.
That they're hiding that part of themselves on the air, and they're not willing to show that with the rest of the world. Whereas me, and of course, I know, and I've come to recognize and understand that every podcaster is different. Not everyone does their episodes the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But whereas me, it's just I'm going to be authentic and 100% organic with my audience, and if they love that and they want to continue, listening to my episodes, that's awesome. I'm going to keep at it. And if they hate me and they don't like my episodes, then that's also great because I don't care if they hate my episodes and they don't like the way I am on air.
Yeah.
I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I'm just more concerned with the people who enjoy my personality.
Absolutely. You want people who actually want to be there while also being yourself.
Exactly.
So good for you. Stick to your guns, stick to what you love, and keep going. I love it. So where can people find you?
Well, I actually have a Facebook since I don't have a website. I wish I did in times like this. How embarrassing, right?
No, you don't really have to have a website. You can have a Facebook page for your podcast. I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. So if they want to find me, I've got a Facebook and a podcasting platform. So my Facebook is www.facebook.com/Michael Joseph Jackson fan. I need to change that, but I've been a huge Michael Jackson fan for a long while.
Oh,
and
nice.
that's been part of my Facebook, link for since I created my Facebook, which is way back in 2011. So, and that was like way before I even discovered my love for podcasting. It's probably back in my teenage years. Like I knew about it. I listened to like very little podcasts and podcasters, but I didn't really have a passion for doing it. I just I was on the listening end. I didn't volunteer or donate or pledge or take a picture, whatever the podcasters would tell their audience to do. I just kind of listened.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can find me on www.facebook.com/Michael Joseph Jackson fan. And, if they want to send me a message I'd be more than happy to, respond or chat with them. I even have a Facebook page, and that is also on Facebook, and they can go to www.facebook.com/Jacob's series. And, my Facebook page is Jacob's podcasting series because really my whole episodes is just a series of events. Hence the Facebook page name Jacob's podcasting series, which they can find on Facebook.
That's great.
And then as for my platform, they can, go to anchor.fm/Jake652. Again, that is go to anchor.fm/Jake652. Or if you want to, you can go to Anchor or even whatever podcasting platform or media device you use, and just type in mentally healthy and look for a guy named Jake, and you will see this picture of a sphere with, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. The left being the colorful one, and the right being the grayish bluish dull color, and with the big black words mentally healthy going across it.
That's
awesome. That's where you can find me.
That's awesome. I will add this stuff to the podcast guide and to the show notes so that people can just click and go find you. But I want to thank you again, Jacob, so much for coming on here and sharing this. I'm so proud of you. You have accomplished so much, and you've just taught me so many new things. So thank you so much.
I was glad I was able to teach you new things, and I'm just coming on here, just having fun and just sticking true to what I do, and just,
Yeah.
In the words of Lewis Howes, shout out to him. He's my favorite podcaster at the current moment.
Mm-hmm.
Runs a show called The School of Greatness. But in the words of him, I'm just sticking to myself and just being great. That's it.
That's wonderful. Well, I love that, and we definitely have to learn that from you today. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing what you do in the future, and congratulations to all your successes.
Oh, well, thank you, and congratulations to your success. I hope you continue doing what you do.
I will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, we will talk to you soon.
All right, I'll see you guys later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Truth We Hide podcast, created and founded by your host, Annette, the founder of A Wild Ride Called Life. Also, a big thank you to all of our sponsors for each and every episode that is aired. We have so much support from them and all of our listeners. You can find more information at www.awildridecalledlife.com.